Hey guys, what is up? So it is just
Oh,
about 11 o'clock. I thought I'd started a minute early just to see if I can get any technical difficulties out of the way ahead of time.
yep,
Uh,
I'm actually here. Do you hear me?
awesome, yeah, definitely. I got a headset this time around, so I'm hoping that'll improve the sound quality. I've been trying to use my
Yeah, it
speakers.
actually does. It's quite good.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah, no one else is here, I guess. No?
We've got about 5 people on the just watching the YouTube, commenting in the live chat, but it looks like it's just you and I on the broadcast so far. But that's all right.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and we'll get started, and other people will join. I don't want to hold it up.
Yep. Well, I mean, okay. Let's go for it.
All right. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to say thank you to DM Suja. He's a guy that I've been talking to back and forth with on YouTube and on the Facebook group for some time now, and he volunteered to take all of the questions that people put in, and he has been organizing them and categorizing them into the live chat questions doc that I put out there. So he took it from a big long list of lots of questions to all categorized, and it's much easier to read this way. So thank you for that. Looks like Brian joined. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Mike.
I've got a headset this time around. It's going to hopefully improve things.
Hopefully.
We will see. So it's just you and I and Sky. Actually, Sky, would you introduce yourself real quick? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I'm Vladimir, the one that you actually posted a reply to just quite 5 minutes ago, I guess.
Okay. Yep.
So I have the same picture on Facebook actually, so it's actually fine. It's this guy with with the funky hair. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yep. I recognize you. All right.
So yeah.
Very cool. All right. So let's start with the questions. Hey, Brian, did you have a chance to look at the questions? I know you were interested in seeing them last time.
I didn't get a chance to. No.
Okay. Do you want me to post a link to them in the? I could put. Let me see if I can post a link actually here real quick.
It's on Facebook.
Cool.
It is on Facebook. There's also now a link in the live chat or in the live stream. Put it in the description as well.
Cool. Oh,
That way, if you
hello.
want to follow along. Hey,
Good to see you.
I was just thanking you a minute ago for organizing everything for me.
No problem. Just trying to, get everything in order.
I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for posting it. Okay, that's nice.
All right, so we can go ahead and start on the questions. I posted a link to the questions in the live chat as well as the description for the video. So hopefully if people want to follow along, they can follow along. I'll kind of mark them off as we tackle them, and that way we can keep the same document going forward and eventually get to everything maybe. We will see. All right, so the first category is called Kundalini and energy body questions. First question, is there a relationship between Kundalini and the vibrational state, and what kind of relationship? So my own personal experience with this is if you've ever, I've gone through a number of Robert Bruce's courses and read his books, and he actually has a course that he specifically talks about Kundalini raising. That's the entire goal of the course, is to talk about raising Kundalini. And his description in that course of raising Kundalini, it is like word for word identical to the way that it feels when the vibrations start for me. And I know this isn't the same for everybody. Robert Monroe talks about the vibrations starting in his head. But for me, they always start at the base of my spine. They go up my spine and then they hit my head. And it is exactly the same as the Kundalini raising experiences that Robert Bruce talks about. So if there's any, I believe there's a relationship. I believe it's another way of describing the same phenomenon. The one thing about Kundalini raising is that it seems to be more, when people talk about raising Kundalini, it seems to be less associated with sleep and relaxation and more associated with meditation and energy work. So that's the part that I still haven't gotten down. I've spent an awful lot of time on energy work, and I spent a lot of time in meditation, but I haven't had the ability to raise Kundalini or feel that vibrational state just during waking hours of the day during a meditative session. So that's my 2 cents on that. And feel free to, what do you guys think?
I haven't experienced it, but I guess I will have to just try and see how to do the how to do the method. But you might wanna explain the method, how you think should be done, or I don't know.
The method of raising Kundalini, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, so that it kind of depends. So if you're talking about, so what I related it to is the vibrational state. And if I'm talking about inducing the vibrational state, for me, that feels the same way people describe Kundalini. And that's just going through my normal projection process. If you're talking about energy work and raising Kundalini, Robert Bruce talks a lot about using things like tactile imaging and basically trying to build up awareness, body awareness in various portions of your body around and on various energy centers. So you've got there's 7 primary energy centers that people call chakras. And Robert Bruce claims that you've got thousands of other minor energy centers or chakras throughout your body as well. And so he talks about stimulating those energy centers and then doing things like fasting, meditating, things like that in order to raise your Kundalini. And that's when it's supposed to occur during the day, during like meditative sessions. And that's what I haven't experienced. Anybody else have a opinion on that or some thoughts?
Well, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I actually had my first out-of-the-body experience with his, including his techniques with the energy work.
Oh, really?
Actually following his mastering astral projection in 90 days.
Yeah.
It took me 30 days though, but so that was a success. But just regarding Kundalini, I don't know. I can't really say much about that more than that the energy work itself. I got some sensations out of that, and I think it helped me. I guess.
It sounds like it if you were successful.
Yeah, well, if I can credit the energy work in itself for that, I don't know, but I guess it's just a tool amongst many.
Yeah, to bring awareness to various parts of your body. It sort of reminds me of like a mindfulness meditation, but rather than focusing on everything that's occurring around you, it's like hypersensitive focus on your self or your internal sensations.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of enjoy doing it just for the ritual, you know.
Yeah, I do too, actually. And then actually that segues nicely into the second question, also in the same topic: energy sensations in chakras. When doing spiritual work, meditating, trying to astral project, do you often experience sensations like vibration, slight pressure, throbbing, things like that in places where chakra points are supposed to exist? So this, maybe you can start with this one, since you did that energy work, the projection in 90 days course. I've gone through that same thing. So I'll put my 2 cents in, but if you want to start, you're welcome to.
Yeah, sure. That was actually my question.
Oh, was that yours?
Yeah, but sure. So yeah, I when I did the book Mastering Astral Projection in 90 Days, I certainly had sensations. I felt that if I could stimulate my chakra points, there was physical sensations. Also, sometimes it kind of felt like how should I describe it? If you've ever been in a trance level or something like that, you can feel various sensations like your waves or like limbs bend or vibrational stuff, not physical really, but stuff like that. It's hard to explain, but just to answer my own question, yeah, I felt I felt sensations in chakra points. I often feel throbbing in my where the third eye is supposed to be located, just randomly actually. So yeah.
So a question about that, because this is the way it is for me. Are there some energy points or some chakras that are more prominent or that are easier to detect than others?
Well, for me, my what is called third eye. I can't remember the other name.
I think
Anyway,
it's the 6th chakra or something.
Yeah, your brow chakra.
Yeah. Anyway, that has always been more easy for me. For some reason, the most hard for me to stimulate has been the base chakra. So that's what it is like for me.
For me, the base chakra is really easy to detect, and I can feel that and then everything between that and my brow chakra, my forehead, is like almost nothing at all. And then my crown chakra, like right up here at the top of my head, I can very easily stimulate or simulate a sensation of like a paintbrush brushing back and forth across my head, and it feels like a real physical sensation. So that one seems to be very sensitive. But like my it's called your sacral chakra and your solar plexus and your heart and your throat, nothing at all for me. So I don't know what that means, if it's a good or a bad thing. Somebody would tell me that I've got blockages, I'm sure.
I think I have blockages myself. Like I think every single chakra I have is kind of blocked by somehow. I mean, my seventh one, when my mom tried to force energy through it, it felt like she was just pushing down my head. But I'm not really sure what was. Can you have an easier astral projection if you like get a Reiki or something to like open all the chakras and stuff like that? That's
a good question. Anybody have an answer to that?
Whether or not we can open up the chakras with a third party, like a Reiki master or something.
Yeah, and whether or not that'll help lead to a projection or an easier time projecting.
Perhaps within the week of getting that done on you, but it seems more like a temporary thing.
They told me there was something like a 10-minute. What was it actually called? It's like when they open it up to like level 3, no, up to like level 4, you have to do something like a 10-minute thinking that your energy is going through you. You know, it's like a and after you get to like level 4, like you stop doing that and it's okay, you know. But I haven't done it, so my mom just told me about it. So yeah.
If that's the case, I haven't reached level 4, because I'll tell you that, like Brian was saying, maybe it's a temporary thing. If I don't,
meditation every single day, you have to do it.
Exactly.
For like
yeah, it's like a maintenance type thing. If you don't do it, it'll start to fade away.
Yes, exactly. So if you don't do it, it's gonna stop, and you're gonna have to do it all over again.
Right.
You have to go to the Reiki master again. So I haven't done it, but I think if it helps, I might actually go for it.
You know, one more thought along the lines of chakras and energy work. A lot of times when people first start out trying to project, they run into the sensation of a severely pounding heart, like just an insanely intense pounding heart, like they feel like they're gonna have a heart attack. And I had this exact same thing. So if you read Robert Bruce, and I haven't been able to test this because that heartbeat sensation has long been gone for me, but Robert Bruce says that that's actually not your physical heart beating. He says it's your heart chakra it's not used to pumping that much energy, and it's basically trying to open up and prepare for the projection of your second body. And so I experienced that when I very first started out. I'd never tried using a heart monitor to see if it really wasn't my physical heart. And now that I've actually got something that'll monitor my heart rate at night, I don't run into that heart sensation anymore. So it seems that once it's open, or once you make it through that phase, it's not a requirement anymore.
Nice. Well, it's quite difficult to make it through, though.
It is. It is. That leads to something I'm going to talk about in a future video on the fear barrier. Well, I'd say probably everybody experiences the fear barrier at some point. And I was chatting about it with somebody in the comment thread. I think I need to cover that one of these days.
Well, I actually posted a reply to you like on the same comment that I posted like 10 minutes ago, and I said, well, I cannot do it directly because I realized that my body won't like go into a paralyzing state. So essentially, when I dream in third person, in other words, like a deep dream, I would hurt myself, like a hand or a leg or something is gonna get hurt because it's just not paralyzed. But as I told you before, I mean, usually all my dreams are like in third person kind of thing. I can watch from above, like on a screen, and just tell what the character should do, like a role-playing game or something like that.
Interesting. So you're watching yourself instead of participating as an actor.
Yes, but the
Oh.
thing is that when I'm watching myself, usually I'm not in a deep sleep. Like I can hear everything around me.
Mhm.
So cars, my mom or something like that. Yeah, my sister. Like if someone's talking, I'm going to hear them. It's not a deep sleep where I don't hear anything. So yeah, it's either this one or the deep sleep. The deep sleep doesn't paralyze me at all, like not at all. So I realized this is big. That's why I cannot go for the direct method.
Well, keep in mind when you're doing that, and I've talked about this before, that like a really deep sleep paralysis, like the kind that you can't break out of even if you want to, that's not required in order to project. You need this numbing sensation of your entire body. You need a general disassociation where your senses can shut down and where you can transfer your focused conscious awareness into the non-physical state. So that doesn't require you to be, you know, the scary sleep paralysis where you're just laying there and you can't move even if you want to. I very rarely actually get that. I've had that a handful of times, and so I know what it feels like, and I can compare it to what I typically experience. But usually what I experience is it's a light level of sleep paralysis. It's like if I wanted to break out of it, I could do it, but I couldn't tell you what position my arms and legs are laying in because they've gone numb and they've shut off at that point.
Oh, I
Does that
see.
make sense?
I think that's pretty important to point out, because in the community there seems to be a lot of questions about what if I can't go into the vibrational state, or what if I can't get my body paralyzed? Can't I project? Or that's I think that's a common problem that people think they're gonna run into, and don't think that they can never project because of that.
Right.
I think you're right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think, yeah, you're right. But I think the biggest problem here is how do you go? How do you take this vibrational state? How do you get it? Like, when is it going to start? This is the kind of mentality that when should I expect it to start, so that
Yeah,
I know
like
I'm on the right track. You
like
see,
they're
it's the
expecting something.
yeah, it's the block sign. It's the road, the road sign. Okay, you're getting there. This is what everyone is just waiting for, and
Yeah.
it doesn't come. It doesn't come, and you're waiting there for hours.
If you're waiting there for hours, I would say most likely, at least based on my own experience, the problem is a lack of relaxation. And I know I've talked about this a lot in my videos, so it's probably rehashing things that you've heard before if you've watched those. But
Yeah.
if you're laying there for 2-3 hours, something like that, and you haven't made progress and you're just laying there awake, then chances are that you just aren't relaxed to the same level that you are when you're sleeping, because that's the kind of relaxation that you're talking about. So for me, I can either lay there and it'll literally take an hour to an hour and a half for me to reach the vibrational state if I'm just laying there. And if I use micro sleep and I dip in and out of sleep over and over again, and that trance state gets deeper and deeper every time I come out, then I can cut it down to more like 30 minutes, and it's much less frustrating. But if you're having a really hard time with that approach, I would definitely say, like, take some time off that and start working with the indirect method, because it sounds like you, based when you're talking about your dreams, you said that you're aware of what's going on. You're very lightly asleep, and it seems to me that if you have that type of scenario, you could probably wake up spontaneously multiple times over and over and over again, and you'd have every opportunity that you wake up to practice the indirect method, and you may end up having more success with that.
Yeah, but actually, it seems like I'm awake at this point. I know I'm awake, but at the same time I'm dreaming. It's just like I cannot figure out, is this a microsleep or is this a dream? Or no, I mean, I know it's a dream. It's just that, am I sleeping or am I microsleeping or am I fully awake?
Well,
This
I
is
would say
what I
that's not
cannot figure out.
microsleep. So microsleep is just a term that I use, but basically it just means you're conscious and you're awake. Then you dip into sleep, you lose consciousness, you're going to black out for like just a second or two. You don't want it to be a 20-minute nap. You don't want it to be a 20-minute dream or something. It's just you dip in, you black out, you come back out. And so you just do that repeatedly over and over again. And that takes some practice to be able to pull yourself back out at will. But it's something that's doable. But I would say that's what you're doing is probably just light sleep and dreaming rather than micro sleep.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But every spontaneous awakening, like I said, you could take advantage of those spontaneous awakenings between each dream or between each sleep cycle, and you could try using the indirect method, and you may have more success with that. That's I've said it before, but most of my successes come from the indirect method. I'm down to probably a 25 or 30% success rate with my with the direct method, where I just lay there forever and let it happen, because I just don't use it as often anymore. I found that it's so much easier in the morning to project as I'm waking up than it is for me to lay there and, you know, commit an hour or something to the process.
Well, I think there is a stopwatch that they provide from Lucidology 101.
Yep.
And it just you can set your times when you want it to ring. So the idea is that that thing rings like once, and this helps you like get out of your get out of the blackout, and then it's gonna ring again after 6 minutes, then after 20 or something like this. And
Yeah,
everyone just has, yeah, it just doesn't work very well.
Yeah, that's called a ramp timer, and my very first experience was caused by a ramp timer, and I recommend them to people to practice. Well, a couple of things. First of all, to practice holding completely still and immediately thinking about projection when you wake up. It's not going to be easy to project immediately on waking up when you've been woken up by an alarm clock or by a timer of some sort, because it wakes you too fully. It doesn't leave you close enough to that awake asleep threshold, because it kind of jars your body awake. But as far as like, you know, it's a difficult thing to remember to stay completely still and immediately focus on projection when you wake up. You know, you scratch an itch, you roll out of bed, you start thinking about work, and then you remember after all of that you were supposed to be thinking about projection. And so it's not always easy to remember to do that. So using a ramp timer over and over again to wake yourself up repeatedly will eventually train you to make that be more of a reflex, so that that's the first thing you always think of when you wake up. And so you can learn to wake up without moving. The other thing is that if you can learn to hold still over and over, and you're woken up over and over again, waking up 4 or 5 times during the course of an hour, if you stay in the same position and stay completely still, a lot of times that'll just lead to spontaneous sleep paralysis, which you can then take advantage of. And I've done that to have out-of-body experiences. So I think it's a good training tool. It's not something you're going to want to use forever, you know, like really long term, but it's not a bad place to start.
Well, that's so nice. Let's move on.
Yeah, sure. All right. So third question, can you create an energy body in the astral plane? Now, when we're talking about an energy body, I feel like the body that I already inhabit when I'm out of body is more of an energy body. It's non-physical. You can do anything with it. So I'm not really sure what this is talking about, rather than maybe separate again and create a second. I don't know. Anybody have any interpretation as to what this one might be?
Well, my mind comes to think about Robert Bruce. One of his books, he mentions he's actually, I don't know what he means really, but I think he meant that he cloned himself in some way in the astral. Like, I don't know if anyone remember that from.
Yeah. So when he's talking about that, at least if it's the instance I'm remembering, he talks about it's like a split awareness. I forget what he calls it. But basically what it is he's in his physical body and he's also in his projected double, and he's looking at himself from both perspectives at the same time and experiencing both.
Yeah.
Now maybe there's
sorry, I think he was actually doing that at will. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. Continue.
I think I have a different idea maybe of what he might have meant.
Okay.
I think maybe like you are there, say maybe manifest another energy body, maybe like I don't know how conscious this other energy body can excuse me, I don't know how conscious this energy body can be, but maybe just manifest another.
Yeah, but I think Robert Monroe meant that he was both at the same time, and he manifested the other body too, and that his consciousness
in that body.
His consciousness was in both bodies at the same time. In the story he tells, I don't recall it.
Is it like
what
when
about
they go and they
what
have
about
like
an independent body?
I think that also was independent in its own way, that it lived independently of him, but he also had consciousness in both bodies at the same time. So
yeah,
at least that's
or
how
maybe
I
fully
interpreted his story.
So I guess
but is it
my question
possible
would
though
be,
to have just
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying, I'm sure, would it be possible then to manifest one energy body that you are not in control of, but you manifested and it's there with you, an energy body,
Now,
I guess.
now that's definitely possible. If you're not talking about or if you're not talking about splitting your own awareness, you can manifest anybody that you want to. It could be somebody you've met, it could be somebody you haven't met, but manifestation in that state and creating these thought forms is a very easy thing to do.
Sylvan, there is one question I have for you, which I want you to think about. When I went to a Feng Shui specialist, and she knew about astral projection, she told me I can learn it, but she told me before I start doing it, I have to work on a protection. What do you think that means?
That's a common idea. And I think that probably comes from the fear barrier and the fact that people, especially when they're in sleep paralysis, like a deep sleep paralysis, tend to experience interaction with negative entities. And there's that whole old hag syndrome that's been around for like hundreds of years, where people think that somebody's sitting on their chest and, strangling them. All of these fear-based ideas, I think, have led people to the idea that they need to come up with some sort of protective bubble or shield around them before they project. And I personally haven't found a need for this, because I've gotten to the point where I know that I can't be hurt, because I've been through a number of different scenarios where, you obviously would have been completely destroyed or killed or smashed or whatever when you're out of body, and it doesn't happen. You can walk through walls, nothing can injure you or hurt you in any way. But I think that the idea of putting a protection around yourself makes it easier for some people to, I guess, bypass or go through that fear barrier, knowing that they've got this protection around them. I don't think it's a necessity, because I haven't ever found it to be a requirement. Robert Monroe never talks about it as being a requirement. William Buhlman doesn't talk about it being a requirement, but does mention that it's something that you can do, and he's got techniques for putting this protective shield around yourself. So it's kind of a subjective thing. It's whatever you decide makes you, I guess, most comfortable with the experience.
Actually, Robert Monroe also mentions, the verbal. What's it called?
Yeah, his resonant energy balloon. He talks about in his, and that's in his Gateway CDs, but he doesn't ever talk about actually using that in his books, to my recollection.
That's in his Gateway as like something you would build around yourself.
Yeah, his Gateway course. It's in the. It's like the third or the fourth track on the Wave 1 CD. He talks about creating your what he calls his resonant energy balloon, which is something to hold all of your energy in and to protect you from external energy that's out there outside of yourself. And so I don't know when he came up with this idea. I don't know if this was after his books were published and then he said, hey, this is something that benefits me, but I don't remember him actually ever using it in any of his stories.
Yeah,
I recognize that terminology from when he brought up that part in his book where he was in the future humanity and they were protecting the hibernated bodies with a resonant energy ball.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So protecting other people with it, right?
Bodies that are
other bodies. Okay.
But I also think he mentioned in the books that they had, or it was perhaps in some other text, that they had limited success with the reball. I don't know what it means by that, though.
Maybe. I can't recall that, so I'm not really sure. But in the end, I would say if it helps you feel more comfortable with the process and helps you through that fear barrier, absolutely do it. There's no harm in doing it. I just haven't found it required personally.
Okay.
All right, on to the next section. Next section is called techniques. How do you tell when a technique is going to work for you and when you're just being lazy, and how to tell the difference? So first of all, I can tell you that there was a point in my practice early on where I felt stumped and like I was making no progress at all, and I would just keep on basically just going through the motions, and my heart really wasn't in it. It was sort of a half-hearted approach because I was like, well, it didn't work for every single night the last 4 months. Why is it going to work tonight? And I would say that if you get to that point and you recognize that you are just doing this half-heartedly and that you're not excited about it anymore, then it's either time to try something else or it's time to take a break for a little bit until you are excited about it, because that excitement, that energy, that intent that you put into it when you really are going at it, wholeheartedly, is an incredibly valuable thing. And it's not going to happen if it's just, well, I guess I got to do it you know, going through the motions kind of thing.
I can really
Same
vouch
thing
for that.
happened to me though. Oh. But now I'm kind of more into motivated to do it. So yeah, I try every night.
What does everybody else think?
I think that if a technique doesn't work for you and you've been doing it for a month, then I think it's time to try something else and consider that first technique not really working out. And that will kind of keep things going and keep things exciting.
And at the same time, I would say that don't just try a technique for a day or two and then toss it out and say this isn't going to work and then jump to the next one, because that's another common mistake I see a lot of people making that I talk with, is they say, well, tonight I tried the rope technique, and last night I tried the hammock technique, and the night before that I just laid there forever, and the night before that, and they're just jumping from technique to technique to technique without really giving any of them a good solid chance to work. William Buhlman, he talks about how with the target technique, when he very first started using it, he had to use it for something like 21 days straight, I think, before it actually was effective and it actually did anything for him the first time. So I completely agree with Brian. If you've spent a month on something, if you've even spent 2-3 weeks on something every single day and it's not doing anything for you, switch it out, try something else. But don't just jump from thing to thing to thing day after day, because you're not giving anything a real solid chance to actually prove whether it's going to work or not. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Me?
I would agree.
I think everyone agrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Have you ever tried any methods for lifting emotional traumas or negative beliefs? Things that work like tapping, also known as EFT, trauma released exercises, hypnosis. I personally do a lot of tapping and it has lifted a lot of previously held beliefs. I was wondering if anyone that you've read about pursued their own paths, overriding the subconscious and the impact that it has on OBEs. All right, so that's a few questions packed into one. My own fault. I didn't parse it out. So any method for lifting emotional traumas, I'm going to have to rely on somebody else for that. I have to say I have been fortunate enough to not have any major emotional traumas aside from just suffering from depression. So I've never had to actually work with anything to try to lift those out.
Well, I can only think about one thing there that might work, and regular affirmations, perhaps, like daily affirmations about what you want to change in your life and how you want to feel emotionally. Perhaps that would be a good place to start.
I'd go run. I go exercise. That helps me.
That is absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's definitely the case. I mentioned depression quickly, and I was going to say actually that since I started going to the gym every day, I haven't had a problem with it, and it's been a decade and a half. It's good to wear yourself out. You know, the other thing is that thoughts are a powerful thing, even if you don't realize what it is your thoughts are doing to you. And so like internal dialogue, I've noticed if I have a lot of negative internal dialogue where I'm being self-critical or even critical of other people, I will feel significantly more drained and just down at the end of the day than I do if I try to maintain control over that internal dialogue and try to keep it more positive and try to look for the good things in life. So I know that's a very maybe unicorns and rainbows cheesy kind of thing to say, but it's absolutely the case with me.
We all like unicorns and rainbows.
Similar experience. Sometimes I don't know how to handle these kinds of negative thoughts, so like I just let them go and sleep the next day, and in the morning I have positive thoughts. So somehow I think when you have a proper sleep, you might actually get some positive thoughts at some point, you know. Sometimes there is no way to actually handle them all, so you're just gonna have to like look for something else to do and like forget about what you were thinking just now, and it's gonna disappear.
I do have a question. Do you guys know what tapping is? I don't know what tapping or EFT is. I've never run across that term.
Tapping.
I heard of it once. It was like you tap yourself on the wrist or something, and then you tell yourself an affirmation. And apparently, it's the sort of tapping feeling that's supposed to like overwhelm your like negative side. But I never tried it. I was like, okay, this just sounds stupid, so I never really tried it.
Sounds more like the tapping would make it easier just to remember the affirmation that you were practicing.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's called grounding. Now I remember. Yeah, you ground yourself. So it's like emotional grounding. I was studying like neuro-linguistical programming, where they try to ground a state to a physical action, like forming a habit, but emotionally.
You know, actually, when you mentioned tapping, that reminded me of something that Robert Monroe says in one of his Wave CDs. I think Robert Monroe did some studying in hypnosis, because some of his tracks in his Wave 1 course are very much hypnosis sounding. And he'll talk about, you know, when you come out of this, you're going to feel great, and all of your bodily, you know, your organs will be functioning optimally and all these things. But then at one point, he actually talks about putting physical motions with specific thoughts to help them become more effective. And that the tapping idea reminded me of that. So he says something like, next time you want to remember something, put your fingers on your left hand on your forehead, or something like that. I don't recall exactly what it was. And it'll be easy to remember whatever it was. And next time you want to get into focus 10 and put your body to sleep, then, you know, do some other motion. And you use this associated motion with this associated thought to give it more efficacy, I suppose. And I haven't spent much time playing with that, but that just reminded me of that that he was talking about.
I heard someone told me that if you have if you put crystals under your pillow, it might actually help you astral project. I'm not really sure how true that is, but
I tried that many years ago. It didn't help me at all. But
was it amethyst? Did you try amethyst?
I put everything under my pillow.
One of each.
Yeah.
I have to say, I tried that as well. I tried with amlethite, I think, and calcite, just different things that the guy at the local crystal shop said would be helpful. And I have to say, it didn't do anything for me. But I think that my skepticism, I think, probably would have counteracted any positive effect the crystals would have had. You know, if I really went into it and I said, this is going to be amazing, this is going to work, maybe it would have, and it would have worked similar as, you know, it would have worked as like a belief or an intent. You know, it would have helped make my intent more stronger. But instead, I was skeptical, and I think my skepticism probably counteracted any effect that it would have had.
Well, actually,
because I've used it.
There was this guy from spirit science called Jordan. He talked a lot about crystals in one of his videos, and he said, don't just expect the crystal to do something for you, just like go for it, and don't mind about the crystal. Like, you have it's gonna help you, but just like do it yourself. Try to do it yourself. It's just gonna help you. I think if you go with it in like a positive direction, it might actually help, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
I think
because I think I've used it before.
I think all this is mostly about the ritual in itself. It doesn't matter,
And
at least this is my opinion, it doesn't matter what tools you use, it's just a ritual that helps you progress.
Yeah. Time though, you know, sometimes it will. But then sometimes you might even think, well, it was probably going to work anyway, but then you never know.
Well, crystals, they vibrate, I think, in different kinds of levels. So, I mean, energy levels. So I'm not really sure how it works. It's just like, I mean, 4D and 5D and all of this, those dimensions that he talked about. Gosh, this actually quite confused me. But yeah, basically, don't expect the crystal to do the things you wanna do. And yeah, just like go and do them yourself, and it actually might help. And
yeah,
that's pretty much it.
Who mentioned the rituals?
It was me. I mean, what I meant was that all things we do to get to the astral projection state or whatever we want to achieve. Basically, I feel it's mostly a ritual. We all have our own ritual how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So the tools we use might be crystals, or it might be affirmations, or it might be whatever we think will work for us. So we try all these different things, and I think there was one author who mentioned this, and now, of course, I can't remember his name, but yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'd agree. Perhaps crystals have some sort of intrinsic value, like the energies around you, but overall, I find people's like ability to get benefits from crystals has to do with their subconscious mind and the ritual that they do with the crystals. Like it's a form of occult magic or ritual magic that communicates with the subconscious mind and perhaps communicates then to the higher self and then the source consciousness. But the subconscious mind and the science behind like how you can push suggestion into it and program yourself to like be more positive and all that is actually pretty reputable. It's like it's not just woo-woo stuff. So I completely agree with you about the crystals and how they're mostly just a ritual rather than some sort of intrinsic alteration of the energy around you.
I completely agree. So you mentioned an author talking about rituals and how it helps the projection practice, and I've read that too, and I can't remember who it is that said it. So I'm not going to.
Something pops into my mind. Sorry, I think it was the author of My Big Toe. What's his name?
Tom Campbell. Yeah, that might have been it.
Yeah.
And rituals don't have to be something like crystals. They could be anytime you're planning on projecting, just go about your process the same way. So, either write affirmations, spend some time reading about projection, wear a specific set of clothing every time you're going to project, and that's your projection outfit or clothing. William Gilman, he talks about how he always practices on his couch, and that's his projection couch. That's part of his ritual. And when you build these ritual steps into your subconscious mind, then when you go and you're following this ritual, rather than saying, oh, it's time to go to bed, your mind then immediately jumps to, oh, it's time to project. So crystals can be part of that, but it can be this whole process before you go to bed if this is what your intent is for that night.
I'm sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh, my mic wasn't working, and I was like, why is everyone talking over me?
Oh, sorry. What's up?
I have that too.
No, I was just talking, you guys were talking about like trauma. I have some past traumas from the military and things like that, and I noticed that for me, it happens a lot in my downtime. So like times where I'm not thinking about something, like if I'm lying in bed and not really thinking about anything in particular, or especially like if I'm driving and my mind starts to wander, that's kind of when the trauma for me comes back. And so I try to keep my mind busy at all times to kind of avoid those downtime.
All right.
Times.
Yeah.
So do you meditate on stuff, or how do you deal with it?
I don't. Maybe I should start doing that though.
Yep.
I just noticed there's a question in the YouTube comment thread I just thought I'd mention real quick. So somebody says, why would Zest for Life says, why would any of you have fear if you know you can't be destroyed in any shape and form? And I thought that was an interesting question, going back to the whole fear barrier idea, and then we'll get back to the questions on the chat question list. I think that it's an interesting thing, because when I went into this, I thought, oh, I'm not afraid. I mean, I'm laying there in bed. What is there possibly to be afraid of? And then the very first time I hit the vibrational state, I was terrified. And I couldn't tell you why I was terrified, other than it was, thinking back on it, I think it was me entering into something that's unknown, and unknown things tend to scare us. That's why people are afraid of the dark. You can't see what's there. And I think that at the same time, I think if you have this inclination that you're about to separate from your body, it seems to stimulate this fight or flight response. At least this was the case for me, where you suddenly start having doubts and you pull yourself back out of it because you don't think that that's something that you want to do. And I don't know why, because you try so hard to get to this point, and then at the very last second you chicken out. And I did that multiple times. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if anybody else has any thoughts on the fear barrier and why knowing, well, I guess I should back up. So knowing you can't be destroyed, that's one thing, but I didn't get to that point for a long time. For a long time, I didn't say, oh, I can't be hurt and I'm going to be fine. So I'm not afraid. That was something that I had to build up to over time. So I think fear was more of a rational response at the beginning. But still, why there's such a fear barrier, I think, is a good question that I just wanted to quickly chat about.
Yeah, because I just want to mention, like, because I'm also going through a little of something right now. Like, I've projected a couple of times, maybe 3, 4 times, but like recently, like when I try, it's like to a certain state where I feel like, you know, my body is beginning to fall asleep, and then I start hearing sounds. But the most common thing, what happens nowadays, like I start hearing like footsteps. It sounds like some footsteps walking towards me, and my door. So from like a long passageway, footsteps that come, it starts getting louder and just starts getting creepy. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm leaving my body here or if somebody's visiting me now. And then a couple of times, like 2, 3 times, and I'm not sure what's up actually.
That's very normal. Actually, I had the same thing. I've heard footsteps. I've heard people call my name. I've had people climb in bed behind me, and all of that stuff. None of it felt particularly, you know, vindictive or malicious at the time. But when somebody that you don't expect to be in your room suddenly climbs in bed behind you, it's going to cause a response, right? That's a fear, or at least alarm, is a natural response to that.
They're entering your personal space, as we call it.
Exactly, and that's we're humans.
Because another.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing I thought of actually that, because you know I've seen lots of videos on like different techniques to use for you to try.
I think we just lost you.
Leave you out or whatever helped me out of my body every time. I'm like close. It's always, you know, on guard, waiting for me to leave my body. And it's always like, oh hey, you're here. Here's a hand. Let's go. And then I thought, could it be that guy? But then I felt, I mean, had it been anything or someone that was there to help me, I thought I should have felt it. You know, I shouldn't be questioning it. There shouldn't be any doubt. You know.
Right.
I might have done something like a premature talpa or something.
Sorry. I was sorry. I was actually told that if you doubt yourself while going in there, you might actually not be able to get there. Like the moment you actually start asking questions like, what is here? What is this? Like, what am I hearing? Who is singing? Or whatever you hear in your head. The moment you ask...
okay, wait, what about me saying... Sorry, I just want to ask, what about me saying, okay, I want to create a talpa to help me? And there's doubting myself, and then it's just all pointless eventually?
No, I think you could definitely do that. That would be similar to the idea of creating protection or that energy resonant balloon that we were talking about before. Essentially, it's going to be it'd probably be a thought form that helps make you more comfortable with that transition. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and it would work.
Also, Robert Bruce talks about this in his books a lot. I think about this stage where it's really important to just learn to ignore all the stuff that's going around, that's happening around you, and pass by that state eventually.
I actually like Frank Keppel's approach a little bit better, where he says treat it with a mild curiosity, because what I've noticed is that if I notice it, but I kind of keep it, like I've said in the past, in my peripheral vision, and I just continue to focus on something else, but I just say, oh, that's nice, or there's something going on over there, then I've noticed that the process just builds much more quickly, and then the vibrations kick in and the separation can occur. But Frank Keppel, he says, treat it with a mild curiosity, but just don't put direct attention on it. And I like that approach a lot. It works really well for me, rather than just ignoring it completely.
Yeah, because I think like if you focus on it, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. If you focus on it, oh damn, I'm sorry.
No, I get where you're going.
I'd like to comment on the initial question about fear. How people are becoming fearful even though they know that they're not, able to be harmed. Well, according to William Bullman's survey, the most commonly reported fear is fear of the unknown.
Yep.
So that has very little to do with like getting harmed. They just don't know what to expect. And yeah, people are afraid of what they don't know. Also, in the astral, entities can impart like information that's intuitive, not necessarily logical, but intuitive information can be imparted and shared very efficiently. And some people are afraid of getting like various subconscious messages that they don't want or various information. And that's just that people who are not really grounded might have a hard time discerning the information for themselves.
That's interesting. I've never thought about that perspective before.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean by grounded exactly?
Like grounded in reality, and they're able to, like, some people just kind of go into the astral plane and accept everything they hear as truth, like from any entity, and I find that to be a mistake.
I agree with that.
Wait, so if someone told you in the astral world something you don't think is true and you believe them, then what? Why wouldn't you? Like,
there's a lot of things that I've been told that are kind of weird. I just document everything as experimental data and put it out there for people to read. I don't claim any of the stuff that I post to be truthful or scientific or anything like that.
It's a highly personal experience, in my opinion, and a healthy level of skepticism is always healthy.
Yeah, like Tom Campbell calls himself an open-minded skeptic. I think that's a good approach.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let's go on. Let's go.
Okay.
No, actually, let's go on.
All right, next one is thoughts on stop, drop, and roll. All right, so stop, drop, and roll, in case you haven't heard of it, is something that Nicholas Newport, he's a guy who runs a website called Lucidology. And he came up with this a long time ago, and it's an approach basically to relaxation, to trying to relax your body very quickly. It doesn't actually lead to a projection, but it's like a pre-step to the direct method, or letting your body fall asleep quickly. Basically, he says you stop, which means you lay down, and he says have your arms up above your head, so you're like this, and then you...
I tried this.
Okay.
And actually, it worked pretty well. It was the one thing I actually did that got me closest to the actual paralysis kind of thing, because I was feeling a lot of stuff at this point.
Okay. Yeah. So he says you'll stop. You put your hands up behind your head, and basically you relax like that. You try to relax as much as you possibly can with your hands behind your head, and then once you get to the point where you feel like there's no possible way you can relax anymore, then you put your arms down to your side and just lay them next to your body. So that's the drop step. And basically that's supposed to release any additional remaining muscle tension in your shoulders. And it's what he calls it is a calculated step to basically tell your body, okay, it's time to relax deeper. So it's one of these physical signals to your body to try to put yourself in a deeper state of relaxation. Your body says, okay, arms are going down, I'm going to relax even more deeply. And then you lay there with your arms next to your side until you get what he calls the rollover signal. Now, the rollover signal is basically your body's attempt to try to see if your mind is still awake. This doesn't have to feel like an urge to roll over. It can feel more like spider webs or cobwebs on your face. It can feel like pain in your elbow. It's basically it's like artificially generated sensations that your body is putting out there to see if you will react to them. And if you react to them, your body says, oh, still awake, I guess I can't shut down yet. If you don't react to them, then your body says, oh, well, looks like the brain's asleep, it's fine for me to start shutting down, and then the process begins. So it's basically just a relaxation technique. And I've used it before. The arms going from the top to the bottom it doesn't do a whole lot for me. Actually, when I have my hands behind my head, I find that the restriction of the blood vessels in my shoulders makes my arms start to fall asleep, and it's more of a hindrance to the relaxation process for me. But I get where he's going with it. It's definitely something worth trying.
I think you do like hands up, then you do hands down, and then you kind of roll over to a side where you don't cross your legs. And at this point, you stop moving. You just stop moving. And then at this point, like I realized my legs actually started vibrating. And they were like everywhere on my body, even on the
Is
face,
it like
on everywhere. And
I hate
hands
this.
I
up
was
or
like
like
sitting
hands
there
behind
like
your
for half
head?
an hour. This was the point I actually got closest to the actual thing. So, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
I just want to ask, like, is it like hands up, just up, or like you sleep on your hands,
No.
or
What you do is like you
you just
lie on your pillow, and then you have your hands up, yeah.
Behind
Like
my
your
pillow
hands
is what I was doing, right?
behind the pillow or behind your head, okay.
Right.
Then you just drop them down, like you relax, and you just for a couple of minutes, and then you just drop them down, and you relax even more, and then you at some point you're gonna feel like you wanna turn over, and then you turn over, and then you don't do anything. This is it. You stop there, and you
okay?
try to like, because there are going to be more signals after that, and you're gonna feel like things are,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you'll see.
I made a
Just
modified
try it.
technique of this. This is it. This is how I did it the first time. So the first time I projected, it was, sorry if I just cut you guys off.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
no,
fine.
this
It's
is
fine. Go.
yeah. So the first time I ever projected, I made a modified version of this technique with what I read on Monroe, but I was super excited at the time. So it's all jumbled, but the way I did it was I lay down on my bed, obviously, and it was on corpse position. So, you put your hands to the side, but I let myself move my neck. So what I did was, I would get lost in thought, come back to my body and just like monitor my body and see like what was going on. And then eventually it started to like have this lead blanket feeling, like you're under a lead blanket. And like the moment before I ended up in like blacking out, I yelled in my mind like astral project, and I guess I moved my neck to the right or the left, and I hit the vibrational state and I saw colors and stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, I made it. And then I chickened out, like you were saying, because I was like, I'll just do this later. I need to know more about this.
Hold on. So how did you lie down? How did you lie down?
It's called corpse position, or you're just like on your back, basically. So you're on your back, hands to your side, legs straight, but relaxed, right? You let your neck move. So if you don't let your entire body move, you just let your head move to the side, to the left or the right. And what you do is you can constantly monitor your body from your leg up to see if there's if you're like hitting paralysis. Because my legs end up going first, and then my entire body goes. And then as it's going, I feel like the lead blanket, or at least a blanket kind of feeling, kind of warm. It's like what face is. It's not like, sometimes it's not lead. It's just a nice blanket feeling where it's like I'm covered and I'm warm and I'm really comfy. And then my head moves side to side. And then right before I black out, right before that point, and that's hard pinpointing. I've tried pinpointing that point of blackout and I just couldn't do it. So I'm doing a new, different technique. I'm just going to go through Monroe's, what was it? Focus 10 for like 66 days. But the idea is right before you black out, you tell yourself gas or project, and then you hit the vibrations. And for me, my vibrations start in my third eye. It doesn't start anywhere else. It just starts from my head and then all the way down. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. One more thought. You mentioned the rolling over piece of it. So I took that as an urge to roll over, and you took that as an actual rolling over. And you might be right, because what I'm thinking about is when I do, sometimes I'll do these nighttime meditations where I'll listen to some kind of guided meditation at night, usually Monroe's CD, and it lasts about 40 minutes, and I'll just lay there very, very still, and I basically just go through this micro sleep process during the course of this CD. And then when it's over, I'll turn off the CD, and I roll over onto my side with a very strong intent to fall asleep very quickly. I basically roll over and say, okay, I'm going to sleep, and I'm going to fall asleep quickly because I don't want to be tired in the morning. And that rolling over onto my side, which I usually sleep on my side, mixed with that strong intent, seems to be like a pretty effective signal to my body or to my mind that says, all right, go to sleep now. And I can almost always hit the vibrational state after that 40 minutes or so of blacking out, coming awake, blacking out, coming back awake, and then I roll over with a strong intent to fall asleep, and my body just seems to shut off, and it leaves my mind awake still. So that I think that rolling over piece of it, I think you might be right about that. It's maybe not the urge, but the actual motion, if that's the position you normally sleep in.
Yeah, otherwise it probably wouldn't work.
Right.
It's not in my case.
For me, it was the like the intent. I did the technique, and
sometimes it comes as the urge to roll over for me. Other times it's like an itch somewhere in my body, like part of my body will start itching, and I'll just like tell myself not to scratch it and try to work through it. And the first couple times I tried to do that, when I didn't scratch that itch, that's when I got the sleep paralysis. So.
You know, the worst part is sometimes there will be actual bugs on my body, and I'm like, oh wait, this is an actual itch, not a.
That is bad.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right, let's move on to the next question. We'll cut it off in the next 10 minutes or so, and then we'll save some more for next time. All right, we're on to tricks and tricks, tips, and troubleshooting. What can I do to stay out of body longer? So I've got a couple of thoughts on this, and I wanted to get you guys' thoughts. So first of all, if I use what's called maintaining and deepening, it seems to make a difference for me. If I try to keep my senses engaged in the projected scenario, then I can stay out far longer. What I've found is that if I, at any point, if I quit engaging my senses and I quit keeping that experience deep and keeping my mind alert, there's times where I will shift from just being projected just to going into a dream. And what I think happens is that my mind started out awake and I projected while it was awake, but due to my lack of effort in the projected scenario, my mind has fallen asleep and the projection ends, and now I just start dreaming. So I would say that's one. And engaging your senses, I talk about it all the time. I eat things constantly while I'm out of body. I just put things in my mouth, doesn't matter if they're food or not, because that's a very easy way to keep my senses engaged while I'm walking around and doing stuff. Another thing is that I found makes a big difference is having a sense of purpose. So having a list of tasks that you want to accomplish. If you get out of body and you're just walking around and you're like, I don't really know what I want to do, typically you'll get snapped back pretty quick. But if you say, all right, so first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to go see this person, and then I'm going to walk through this wall and check this out. And you've got this list of tasks that you want to accomplish where you can just jump from one to the next after each task is complete. I found that that makes a huge difference for me as well.
I always was thinking, okay, when I'm gonna go in there, like I have a list of what I wanna do. So I wanna go in there, I'm gonna do this first, and that's it. And that's probably going to take me quite a long time or quite a short time. So I'll do this and this and this and this. But I never got to there. So I'm keeping the list in my head and thinking, okay, when I eventually I get there. So yeah.
Add to your list. Also, many authors mention that in the natural process of astral projection, the trips get longer if you keep it up, of course.
That is very true. Yeah, at the beginning it was like 15 seconds top or so, and like I'd be out for 15 seconds or so if I was lucky, and now it's typically right around 15 minutes.
I heard from someone that you have to keep a balance between a physical and astral projection, because I don't know why, but some people say you cannot stay like more than half a day in astral projection and not come out. It's just it's not healthy, or I don't know what they told me, but I don't. Yeah, you can suggest why there should be a balance or whatever it is. It's just that I heard it from...
That's interesting, because I've wondered, like, what happens when you're astral projecting, like, your physical body? Because I've seen a video of Xavier talking about he's come back dreaming. I've just wondered, like, how long can you push it? You know, a day, 2 days, maybe?
I think there is
always a limit.
There's a reason we're in the physical world, living here, experiencing this. So astral projection is another. I don't know how to. I lost my train of thoughts.
But you're right, there is a limit. So even people like Robert Monroe, I think the longest experience I recall him mentioning was about 3 hours, which is incredibly long, longer than I've ever had anything last.
Wow.
So you've got somebody who's been doing it for 4 decades who's out for 3 hours. It's not like you can just stay out for a day or two. You come back at some point. You're either pulled back because you've got some sort of biological function. You got to go to the bathroom. You need to get a drink. You're hungry. or you just get pulled back sometimes for no reason at all. That's the way it works. What are your thoughts, Brian? I wanted to hear what you think about it.
All right, so I stay out of body longer by engaging tactile sensations. So even if I don't have a body, like a distinct material body, I'll try to somehow get a tactile download of my environment. And that makes the environment more immersive, keeps me from sensitizing to my actual like physical body organs, like the sensory organs. You always want to have your experience that you're having to be more immersive than, say, like all the tactile sensations of your bed and like the noises in your environment. Otherwise, you're going to be brought back to your physical body. Also, I try not to, like when I feel that my experience is starting to destabilize, I minimize the amount of like logical thinking. Like I'll stop counting something, for instance, if I'm like counting the moons in the sky, or I'll stop like analyzing as much. And I find that has helped me out quite a bit, because when I get too logical and too analytical, I find that that kind of activates a part of your brain that's not congruent with sleep, and it brings me back. So I try to avoid that type of thing.
That's interesting. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. But I think you're absolutely right. Any sort of intense focus that I try to put on things, if I try to read things, for example, or like you're talking about, count things, it does seem to destabilize stuff. And I had never put that together before.
So another thing that I'd like to say is that I feel like I'm out just as long when I have, like no material form, when I'm not physical. It's just that I can't remember as much because it's so abstract. It's not something that could be effectively serialized into my physical brain. I think that's why people think that their immaterial experiences are less long, that they think they're shorter, but they're not actually shorter. That's just a theory I have, is that it's just not downloaded as well as more material experiences.
It sort of feels like with dreams, same way as with common dreams.
The other thing I'll say is that it's regardless of how long you're out really physically, and as far as physical time goes, the perception while you're in the out-of-body state doesn't match up with the perception when you're with what time actually passed. So for example, in 15 minutes, I've flown up to the edge of the atmosphere and flown to Russia and come down, and I explored a train station in Russia. Obviously not possible in 15 minutes, but the time differential is it doesn't always match up exactly.
Yeah.
I would imagine then what you can do for 3 hours. You'll be probably like exploring the whole middle astral plane.
Oh yeah, so Robert Monroe, when he has his 3-hour experiences, he talks about going to what he calls home. So he goes all the way up to heaven and he explores it and he analyzes it and decides he doesn't really want to be there. And he has these lengthy conversations with his InSpec, his intelligent species friends that he meets there. And all of these different things that, obviously couldn't happen in a 3-hour period of time in the physical plane. So time is very relative.
Is it due to age? Like, Robert Monroe and William Beelman are older, so I mean they're closer to their deaths, which means their energy bodies are more separated from their physical, which would that make sense, or am I being rude?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask the question, do people who are older have an easier time projecting? And I would say, based on the people that I've talked to, it tends to be the younger people who just take to it naturally, like teenager type age people that take to it naturally.
You should ask William Bullman that when you talk to them. See how that goes.
So you're old. Do you think that helps?
21.
24.
No.
All right, let's end with this one. We'll do one more.
How do you guys found about astral projection?
How did we find out about it?
Yeah.
Well,
that's a good one to end with. Yeah, we'll do that. That's fine. We'll do that.
Yeah, I can start. For me, it was actually I was in my 20s. I suddenly, for no obvious reason, remembered experience I had when I was very young, very small, a small kid, and then stuff began to happen again. So it felt like a very higher self decision thingy. I don't know.
Anybody else?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll go last.
Okay. Well, sometime, when was it? Say 2015.
Okay.
Also, 4 or 5 years old, and I never really knew what it was. And I just remember I was flying around the house, and it felt so real. So, you know, I knew sometime 2015. Yeah, I saw some video on YouTube talking about.
Yeah, I think we lost you.
Yeah, breaking. I know for me it was.
I know, you know, yeah, just getting back into it, actually having fun with it.
Cool. All right.
For me, it was I was getting interested in the paranormal and things like that, ghosts and hauntings and stuff like that. And I read Lloyd Auerbach's book, ESP, Ghosts and Hauntings, and he has a section in the book devoted to astral projection, OBEs. I forget the guy's name. He talked about Alex, somebody that could project into a room and supposedly describe everything, and that's kind of how I got interested in it.
I watched, I was first interested in how energy works with chakras. So I remember like from when I was like 14, I asked my mom like what are chakras and stuff like that. So she told me like get another, after 2 years you can go and get a Reiki, and they will actually tell you. But then like a few years ago, I found a video from Spirit Science talking about chakras and astral projection and other stuff like that. And I didn't know what astral projection was until I watched that video, and it was such a nice video that like it got me so motivated. I'm like, oh gosh, I want to try this. This is like virtual reality, and I'm like, I was crazy about this topic. So I'm like, you know what? If this works, I might just like quit gaming, like for the rest of my life. I might actually just do that. And yeah, since then it's like it has been a motivation for me to actually try that and see if it actually is true, if it actually works, because yeah. I mean, go ahead.
How about you, Brian?
Well, I can't really remember a distinct event where I first found out about astral projection, so I suspect that I was just like browsing the internet as a child, like looking on paranormal sites about paranormal stuff, and I eventually came across it. I suspect that's how I got introduced. It's just like internet browsing indiscriminately.
But then you've had sleep paralysis since you were a kid, right? So you've had experiences that you maybe then could help explain. Is that an accurate guess? Yeah.
Actually, I might have heard about it first in church because people were talking about their sleep paralysis experiences, and perhaps they were also talking about their astral experience. I mean, I wasn't paying attention too much, but yeah, that could have been a possibility. I've been having out-of-body experiences long before I knew about it, for sure, like several years.
I discovered it January 4th, 2014. I was actually doing research on lucid dreaming because I had a lucid dream, and I wanted to learn how to have them more on command. It used to just be like a spontaneous thing once every year or so, and I thought it'd be so cool if I could just learn how to do this. And doing searches on YouTube for lucid dreaming techniques, I came across astral projection and Lucidology 101, Nicholas Newport and his stuff. Same guy we talked about who does the stop, drop, and roll techniques. And I immediately said, this is a bunch of crap. I don't believe any of it. And so I went to bed that night with his ramp timer ready to go off at about 3 in the morning, and just to prove to myself that I was right and that there was nothing to it. And it worked. And I woke up in the middle of the vibrational state. I separated and got out of body. And then I read 75 books on this topic and started a YouTube channel.
Wow. Okay. Well, nice, Sylvan. You were quite lucky to make one, to get one at least once out. You know.
I was lucky that it worked the first time, because if it didn't work the first time, I would have written it off as, yep, this is the nonsense that I thought it was, and I would have just gone back to something else. So I was fortunate.
So you don't remember anything from you were young or any stuff like that?
Well, actually, so the only experience I had when I was young, I didn't ever have any out-of-body experiences that I recall. But when I was 13 years old, I woke in the middle of sleep paralysis, and I was in the vibrational state. And I mentioned that it always starts at my lower back, like at the base of my spine. And I thought somebody was jabbing me in the lower back with some sort of electrical something, you know, like a cattle prod or something, electrocuting me. And it literally felt I was being jabbed and shaken, and it was terrifying. And then the sleep paralysis faded away, the vibrations faded away. I rolled over and there was nobody there. And I didn't find out what that was for 20 more years until I discovered this process and this practice. And then I said, oh, I was in the middle of a vibrational state. I could have done something with that. But it was a spontaneous experience that I never could explain until 20 years later.
Wow.
So I think that's a good place to stop. We got through a few questions. There's always lots more, but I know people have been posting questions in the live chat as well, and we didn't cover quite as many of those this time. But what I'm going to do is I'll copy that entire thread before I close this window, and I will pick out the questions that aren't already on the list, and we'll add them for next time. And that list will just keep on growing, and we'll keep doing these live chats as long as there's questions to be answered and as long as you guys are enjoying it. So I appreciate you guys joining.
Until everyone is in just world, I guess.
Yeah, right. All right, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, man.